We're going to dive right in. Anyone who will see you on the video is going to be like, how is he retired? He seems very, very young to be retired. But to be very exact, like you had an investment company and you had billions of assets under management, and you decided to retire from that life, from that incredibly attractive life, I would say, which from the outside, and you decided to retire and to full-time pursue your philanthropic pursuits. And you did that in, I believe it was 2017. And so, like, you give up this incredible sort of like life to devote yourself entirely to the cause. And that's when you set up your foundation, which we're going to talk about, which is primarily focused on fighting child trafficking. But I think the obvious question is, like, why? Why at that moment in time did you feel like, you know what, I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to pivot my life in such an extreme way, going from sort of like one end of the spectrum to the other?
Well, I mean, I'm going to answer that question by actually backing up to the beginning of my career. I had a mentor. I'm a Gen 1. I didn't come from we didn't even have furniture in our living room when I got married type thing, right? But I had a mentor that told me this. He said, Paul, he said, if you do what I teach you to do, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're 30. You'll have the time to enjoy it. And, we were going back and forth on some things. And so I decided to listen to some of the things he was teaching. And one of them was this. He said, Paul, if you make a decision today to give generously to charity, it's going to make a big difference in your business. And I said, I don't understand how that works. He goes, well, the average person donates about 2%, less than 2%, or right around 2% of their income to charity. He said, wealthy people donate statistically even a smaller percentage. And he said, make a decision that it's not 2% for you. It's not even 5. It's not even 10. It's upwards of 15 to 20% of your money and 20% of your time to making a significant impact in the lives of others, to charity work. He said, make that decision today. He said, you can call it karma. You can call it the universal law of exchange. You can call it blessings from God. Call it whatever you want to. He said, there's a power that's very interested in us doing good, and you'll see financial rewards. I thought that I wanted to be successful in business so that I could be charitable, not I'm going to be charitable so I can be successful in business. That seemed opposite of what I felt. And he said, listen, he said, just test it. And I did. And I tell people this, I said, looking at my life today, how does somebody become a partner, let alone founder of what is now a $48 billion investment fund? Well, you're not a University of Utah dropout, right? The statistical probability of me being where I am is 0. The only way that I can understand it is the fact that I made that decision in my early 20s, and I saw miracles happening throughout the entire growth of my business. So I tell people I'm not that charitable. I just need help running my company, and my creator does a better job than me type thing. So that's where things started from a charitable standpoint. And so I had been involved in a lot of different charities. I served on the Make-A-Wish board of directors for 7 years. I was the incoming chairman for Make-A-Wish. And then I got a phone call from our attorney general that changed my life and brought me into the world of fighting child trafficking.
Talk us a little bit through going from that extreme moment of clarity and that extreme moment of appeal to institutionalizing the foundation and sort of like building that momentum around, like, what you wanted to achieve, because you've had more than, I think, 70 recovery operations in 15 countries by now under the foundation. And that's remarkable in this amount of time. So talk us through that implementation part of it.
Absolutely. So in the very beginning, I didn't have the time or interest in putting together my own foundation. I was there to help, and I was funding a lot of other 501c3s, and I was the incoming chairman for Make-A-Wish in our area. And unfortunately, I had to turn down that opportunity because I felt so strongly that I needed to focus all of my philanthropic time on this. Now, again, my mentor in my early 20s said, Paul, donate not just your money, but your time. Up to 20% of your money and up to 20% of your time. That's a lot of time. If I'm working a 40-hour work week, 20% of that is 8 hours. And so, finding some time, an hour or two a day to donate to charity, that was really what made a difference for me, is getting my hands involved. And so I was on the board of directors with that foundation. For many of the undercover missions that I did, I was working with that foundation and others in the beginning. And I saw some things a little over 5 years ago that concerned me. In the philanthropy world, you have to be so careful as to who's using the foundation for their own ego, for their own political aspirations, for their own pocketbook and whatever. And if you really look carefully at the foundations that you're supporting, you'll undoubtedly find some that they're out of integrity in that space. And so I was not impressed with a few of the things that I saw with that foundation, and had started the Child Liberation Foundation. In the beginning, it was just there to put my own money in, so then I could decide what other foundations to help to fund. And that's really how it ran for a while, as I was just doing undercover work. I wasn't building the foundation. I had retired from the fund, and was just focusing on philanthropic stuff. But then, the end of last year, I decided to go public, and did my first podcast just early this year. And at that point, I can't do undercover work anymore. I've led or played a key part in over 70 missions, and we can go into lots of stories about what that looks like. But I realized that if I'm ever going to make a powerful impact, just rescuing 20 kids at a time was never going to do it. We needed to take the momentum of the movie and take it to a whole new level, especially in light of the fact that there are some people involved with the movie who come out in the news have not, acted with integrity in every area of their life. And, people are fallible. They are what they are. They're not, raping kids. They really are saving kids. But at the same time, I didn't want the world to be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And so we needed to focus on having a global voice.
What's your advice to anyone who's trying to live their purpose and like looking at what is the best way for them to contribute to creating an impact?
Absolutely. I think that we've all used some of these principles to help us be successful in business. Things like, visualizing the ideal outcome, etc. I ask myself all the time, if time and money were no issue at all, and I knew I couldn't fail, what would I dream? What does that look like? And I had a quote on my room when I was a kid. I had a bunch of Lambos and Ferraris and a nice house, and I had a quote that said, "He who has the most toys wins." I now have one that says, "He who has a powerful, positive impact in the most lives wins." By making that personal change internally, I realized, okay, now it's not all about the show. It's not all about that next check there of I got another million, or I got another car, or I did another rescue even. Those were all still a kind of an ego-feeding type of a thing. So I had to take some steps back and say, okay, what is my real calling? What is my real purpose? And a lot of people were pushing. They said, Paul, you've been in the pit of hell. You've been in the darkness. You can tell these stories like nobody else can because you've been there. The world needs to hear your stories. In fact, one very, very well-known motivation speaker, one of the biggest in the world, he said to me after one of the ops that he saw the end result of, he said, Paul, the world needs to hear your stories, but the world can't know who you are while you're still undercover. And so, that was 5+ years ago, and so many people were pressuring me to go public. And I said, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy that's using the sizzle of the rescue of the children to bring them to paulhutchinson.com. No, that can't ever happen. And they said, as long as you're speaking from a place of the heart and with pure humility, and this really is about the kids, then you need to use your voice. You need to not be, you're saying, I'm too humble to have my face out there. Really? No, maybe it's fear, right? You need to really let your light so shine, right? And if we don't use our voice, if we shy back and say, oh, what are people going to think? Are they going to think that I'm trying to put my face out there to a grand? Let them think what they want to, without getting out there and showing the world by example how you can make a positive impact in the lives of others. Then their heroes and their idols are going to be people leading them the wrong direction. So that's why I decided to go public and use my voice and use the stories and use my resources to help create a global movement that we started with the movie.
I think that's the dream for anyone, right? Like anyone wants to get there somehow. And I think people, of course, like we know that like people who have the means, like, should be more interested in that, but it's not always the case. I think this applies to anyone. As you said, like even when there was no money, like this idea of giving to charity was like part of your sort of like mindset. And I think, so talk to me a little bit more about that. So if you talk to that next generation, what's the first step?
I tell people this: find what you're really passionate about. Saving the trees, saving the whales, saving the kids, saving the free speech, whatever it is. You figure out what really, really, really means something to you. Something that excites you so much to do something about that you don't have to wake up to an alarm clock in the morning. You're like that. If I could leave that legacy, that's something that if my kids and grandkids knew me for X, what would that be? I asked myself, what do I want to be known for? And what do I want to be a part of? And how can I leave a legacy? And does a legacy just look like, enough money to pay for everybody's college and the new house for all of the great grandkids? No, I don't think that that's a legacy. That's, in some cases, it's doing them a disservice, right? A legacy is something that your second grader grandkids are telling their friends at school who their grandpa is, right? Because he's making such a beautiful impact in the world. That's what a legacy is.
You've had a box office success with Sound of Freedom, an amazing one. Congratulations. What is the strategy when it comes to like keeping people's minds on eradicating child trafficking and really like keeping people willing to have this extremely, extremely upsetting and uncomfortable conversation? In other words, giving people the courage to look that little girl in the eye alongside you and making things right.
The movie had one purpose, and that's to open up that door of being able to talk about this. However, I was in a conversation just on an interview yesterday with somebody that was very high up in the White House and said to me, actually asked the question, should the Sound of Freedom movie be used as a training video? And I said, absolutely not. It's a movie. There's a lot more going on in trafficking than what you see in the movie. Yes, those things happen. Yes, there's children that get taken from a healthy family and get put on a container ship and taken to another. Yes, that happens. But the norm is not that the best thing people can do is go home and hug their kids. And they say, well, how does that make a difference? No, it's because the at-risk children for trafficking come from runaways, broken families, a broken foster care program, or the bigger challenge that could happen with your own kids, with everybody who's listening here, is that the fact that there's a very, very high percentage chance, upwards of over 25% chance, that somebody in your family or somebody in your neighborhood is doing things to kids. And so having these conversations is important. That the movie just opens the door. Where to from here? The most powerful person in America, in my opinion, is not a political leader and isn't a church leader. The most powerful people in America are the content producers, is the podcasters. Guys like, there's Joe Rogan. I mean, he has more eyeballs every day than the Super Bowl. And so having these people of influence, I call it working with the tip of the umbrella. So my goal is to spend one-on-one time with these power influencers, ultra wealthy families, people that are running large foundations, people with massive followings, and help them identify something of purpose that they can push out to their audience and show as an example. So we're bringing them into different activities and filming those, of helping to build some of the safe houses for the kids and expanding things from there. So that's what my goal is to continue the momentum by continuing to go public. Just in the last 5 months alone, I've had over 400 million views on my podcasts and my videos, and I just went public just earlier this year. And so it's been a whirlwind, and super grateful for all of the good people that are putting me on their platforms, but continuing that conversation, not just so that we can talk about child trafficking. That doesn't fix the problem. Taking that conversation and saying, okay, what do we need to do to keep our own kids safe? What do we need to do with the skills that we can teach them so that we can sleep well at night, knowing that they know how to protect themselves, that they know what to really be watching for, and that we have a relationship with them that is so strong that they can easily come in and say, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Perry because of, how he touches me, or I don't like to go to that friend's house because her brother, grabs me on my bum, or our babysitter is showing us pornography and tells us that we should trust her more than you. These are grooming things. These are things that we need to be aware of as parents. Or if something did happen, hey, Mom, I feel really sick in my stomach because this happened at recess behind the rocks. This boy did this. Having the relationship with your kids where they can talk about it will release so much of that trauma immediately, so they're not holding on to it for decades and decades and having it affect their self-esteem and anxiety, depression, anger issues, etc. So those are all those are all the ways that I'm taking. That's what liberating humanity is about, is helping adults to heal through their trauma. We have healing retreats all over the world. In fact, that's one of the reasons we're down here, is we're working with different healing retreats that we can bring adults in who have experienced trauma as children and help them release that. We can get more good at one of these 4-day healing retreats than 10 years worth of therapy in the US and abroad. So that's what the goal is helping to fix the problem by helping people to heal.